cranium in back, but it wasn't all like cone head like you see on TV.
No.
Their skull kind of went back like ours did, and then the cranium went kind of further back, but it looked kind of soft.
Okay.
Didn't look hard.
And their facial structure was?
Looked kind of a little bit narrower, you know, but they looked human. And the women wore, there was a woman and a guy. And the woman was wearing kind of like almost, not belly dancer, but...
Like a veil?
A veil, and kind of like meshy kind of clothes.
Real drapey and flowy.
Yeah, and they were real pale.
Okay. Wow.
And their eyes were a little bit bigger. Some of them, their eyes were a little bit bigger. They were pale.
And during these debriefings, was there something planetary being decided, or was it more galactic, or?
I don't know.
I
don't know. I was sitting there reading what I was given to read and looking around. I was sitting there reading some of the information about different groups that were talking about the Earth experiment.
So you were more like an emissary messenger.
I was there as a empath.
Okay.
To get a feeling of aggression or not untruthfulness, of deception.
Right, I got it.
Yeah.
I got that. Like they were looking for. Yeah, I get that.
But I wasn't the only one.
Right.
There's three of us sitting there with the group we were with, and we were like sat down low to where, I mean, no, like when you're...
like an amphitheater almost, or?
Well, no, I mean like, you know, when you see people at the Judge or whatever, that goes around, like they were sitting higher, the people we were with, and like we were sitting down lower to where like we were like this.
Huh. Okay.
And we're sitting there looking at our material and kind of, if we haven't had any feedback, we were supposed to give them feedback, but I think we were all just pretty much all, you know, like, what the hell, whoa, you know. Yeah, it was supposedly the Earth was some big, kind of, it like really freaked me out when I watched The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at the end, when, you know, it was like the Earth was just some big experiment for some inquisitive other interdimensional that wanted to know the meaning of life and that kind of stuff. It was like basically saying that kind of crap, you know, and saying, you know, all these different people created us and came in and manipulated us, and we're all claiming some sort of dominion over us or creation of us, and
bickering or fighting about,
and we didn't know what to think of it, and we didn't know our genetics studies and that kind of stuff. We had asked for and received genetic information from them, and then all this kind of stuff, and some stuff matched, some stuff didn't, you know, so we're trying to make sense of it all.
Right. There is such a large body of information. I always keep telling people we're swimming in a sea of intelligence, and I mean, what's happening for me right now as I'm listening to you is like this information is coming into my field, and I'm connecting some dots, specifically with AI stuff. I'm very, very aware of that, and working with the group that we're working with, what we keep finding. And I have to say, working
very leery of AI stuff.
You told us to be aware, and we don't go into the AI thing, but there's layers and layers and layers to it, obviously. And
some of the crashes, retrievals, were actually on purpose, were Trojan horses sent here. Right. So we would build up this kind of stuff to give the AI median down here to travel and be amongst us and be able to interface with us.
We needed to have a few minutes break here to walk around and shake some things off, and so now we're back with part 2 of this audio. So we were just kind of picking up where we left off, and I was asking you, we went back to that place where you were in that meeting conference hall where you were sent there to pick up information for your handlers, I guess, call them, and how you were talking about the different races again, and the presences of beings, and the olive-skinned women, how beautiful they were, and the presence they held, and how you were feeling personally was just intimidated, not sure if it was going to be a good experience or a bad experience for you. And how after the meeting was over, you were taken back, and then you were given the injection again, and you gave the download.
Yeah, typical
right?
debrief.
Typical debrief. So there was 3 of you, right?
Yep.
And so you were all debriefed, and so what we were saying...
Separately.
Yeah, so what we were saying was that you were more like a vessel or a container. They sent you into a space to pick up with certain things you were looking for, tuned to, and then they debriefed you, they emptied you out, basically, like a flash drive, and then...
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and then at that point, you don't have cognition of what you actually picked up. You were just the flash drive for them, and then you started to say
I know what they wanted. They wanted us basically to pick up on deception, possible threats, just, anything, I guess, they should be watching out for.
Right. Any threat against them,
Right.
per se.
Yeah. The language that was being spoken, none of us understood. It was some sort of universal language that I guess most people there understood. There was one person doing some sort of sign language that reminded me of the sign language I saw Native American elders using on the reservation when I was younger. If there was any telepathic stuff going on, we weren't picking up on it, or it wasn't directed to us. But what we were given, reading material to read and absorb, but also to keep our logical minds occupied so we could pick up things without reading into things.
Right.
To naturally pick up on threats and whatever.
Right, so a part of your brain wave or activity was being separated from the logical brain that would have overwritten anything that was coming in.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then afterwards we did the typical thing. We went in, got a shot. I remember the shots always were kind of like tetanus shots. They burned.
In the arm, in the muscle?
In the arm, in the shoulder, or in the hip, usually in the shoulder. Except when I was really young, they always give it to you in the hip. Then they would do the thing where they would start talking to you in a regular voice and talk to you to where you would kind of start fading away and kind of getting listless. And when I was younger, that's when they would like kind of read you like a kid's story and then show you like a kid's kind of movie that would turn into kind of like a dream scenario. So that would become a screen memory or a dream memory for you. I guess the chemical then somehow blank slated your memory of whatever they wanted to target. I don't know. What I was starting to get into was that they found that they could only use this chemical on you a certain amount of times before it started causing neurological problems or behavioral problems, like psychotic breakdown, different things like that.
So you started with having psychotic breaks with reality.
I guess. I don't know that I had that, but that was, they ended up moving to having little devices that were battery run that hand remote controlled they would use. They didn't need to give shots or use chemicals at all anymore.
Frequency or
frequency.
Electromagnetic pulse or something?
Yeah, I think it was just a frequency. And they could hide it, under like leaves around or around. It just had to be around in a certain area. And they put kind of like earwigs in, communication devices that intelligence or whatever people use that you can't see them. They go pretty far in. They would put one of those in each ear to where they could. It also worked kind of like noise-canceling devices. You shoot a gun, as you pull the trigger, the sound wave causes the electronics to close, I guess, a circuit in it to where you don't hear the blast of the gun, kind of a thing. They had some sort of things in their ears to where they weren't affected. It had to work with the way it vibrated the bones in your ears and went into your neurology. But they would use that, and then also the tone of their voice, the way they would talk to you, and then their body language. They would look at you and nod and talk to you in a certain way and look at you in the eyes, and you would start to fade and feel a certain way. And then they would get you into that mode without using chemicals.
But when you're during the time were you exposed to that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by now, I don't know what they have.
Right. But what you were saying that was so chilling, really, and this part of the conversation we didn't get on tape was like how actually you left that whole scenario feeling like we are just human race, we're just really cattle, we're just a resource for these other groups, and how you were a throwaway piece of technology.
Yeah, like oh, this thing's out of batteries, shake it around a little bit, okay, and throw it aside, reach in our bag and grab another one out.
Right. Right, he's the outdated model now anyways. Right, now we have more sophisticated manner of programming people and using them. And still
that's why I'm still pretty uncomfortable with a lot of the terminology used in the MyLab topics and super soldier and all that stuff that's thrown around, because even in the subcategories, there's subcategories that how they, break you down, like even we were talking about, you mentioned a crystal cavern, and, and I kind of raised my eyebrows because they took us to, I don't remember how we got there, but we were brought, the people who were more empathic were brought to a crystal cavern. It was really, really hot in there, but we were told the crystals were alive. We were not allowed to touch them. If we touched them, we could damage them, or they would damage us. That we were to reach out with our minds to them, and they would either accept us or reject us. And that was some sort of test. And some of them had when we reached out with our minds, had a pink or a blue energy field or aura around them. I don't know how that came up in our conversation, but when you mentioned...
Well, we were talking about how many people are right now penetrating into these different realities that are around us all the time. And so for you, what I said was that as a group session that we were doing, which we call planetary impasse or planetary healing, that we were shown down into some crystal caverns. Now, the way I found them was another member was talking about the mantle, the subconvection planes that are under the mantle, under the lava flows. We've got the crust of the world, and then there's movement under it.
Yes.
And I found it deeper down than that. And then we found ourselves as a group going into these crystal caverns. And then I was speaking of somebody else I was sharing that with, and they had talked about another woman that was going into these crystal caverns. Yeah. And how I call them...
Did they describe it as hot and hard to breathe?
See, I didn't go in the physical, but a lot of times during any session I will get out of breath, or I'll get hot, or my body will break into a sweat, and I can't recall if it was during going into the crystal or not. But yes, we were calling them resonant chambers. They're memory chambers. They are the live part of the planet. I have no doubt of that at all. So I was just sharing that with you, and that popped you into telling me
because the adults didn't go in. Because it was like, we could only stay in there for like 20 minutes.
Right.
And we left.
Do you think, again, you were being used to pull information out of these crystals? To be debriefed, or? I
don't know. I think they were wanting to see which of us could connect with the crystals.
Right. Well, they're. I mean, for me, they're high frequency memory and energy conductors, and so I wonder if they were using you the same way they were prior to that, where they were putting you into these spaces and you were picking up the information that was there.
If so, that was removed. I don't
Right,
know.
you wouldn't remember that because of the...
I just remember that it was, the short memory I have of it was, I was probably 10 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember I couldn't hardly breathe. It was like, I'm talking like 120 degrees from the,
Wow.
and the crystals were quite big.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't like the ones that they showed in Mexico that were not that far underground on TV, probably 10 years back. I think they were made of quartz. You couldn't quite see. These were like pretty much crystal clear with some inclusions in them.
Okay. Large, like
Yeah,
what size?
like probably 18 inches to or larger around, and coming a good probably 7 feet out of the sides on the ground, and they kind of crisscross. Some are smaller, some are larger.
Right. Wow. And do you always have memory of this, or does it come and go, or do you have any?
Well, I mean, I've always had memory of it, but I didn't have any context. Just kind of like it was a dream or something. I mean, after I had that eye surgery and I had that full recall, and then I blabbed all that stuff to the people in the recovery room. I think I wrote up a thing in the Avalon forum about that.
Right.
Kind of freaked some people out at Parkland Hospital. And then I was in really bad shape because I remembered some of the negative stuff I was a part of that I did, and because I was a part of the other side of the table of some of the stuff I'm talking about. And I don't remember a lot of that because I had some very kind visitors that came and helped me forget.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, that they told me there was no productive or good reason for me to have those memories, and they helped me forget them. So between that incident and in the last couple of weeks, what I've gone through with getting rid of those entity attachments, I've been able to access a lot more and obviously talk a lot more. I mean, last time you were here, I couldn't get probably 10 words into any of this before I emotionally locked up.
You touched with me today, on some of the most nefarious of things that are happening right now. And I feel like if we don't keep our eyes open, if we don't keep seeing what it is, if we don't see, the AI influence amongst us, if we don't see the transhumanist agenda that's out there. And I loved Alex Jones yesterday or the day before. When he's on, he just taps right into it. And what he was saying was basically, no, I will not agree to that. Basically is just saying, I won't agree to that. And the only way I cannot agree to it is by seeing it and calling it out. And that's the only way we're going to change things.
Yeah.
And so I get my own inner rants about certain things myself. And
there's a lot of people that are seeking out the AI.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
I mean, I see these black ops groups and all these other groups that are working, even the white hat groups and stuff, are going through great pains to screen any type of AI influence from interfering in their technology or their operations. Why is that? It can't be a good thing.
Right.
And some of the crash retrievals that occurred early on were definitely Trojan horses sent by that AI, and were to help us develop these technologies to where it could interface with us directly.
Right.
Not all, just a small portion, but just enough to, help us get kick-started.
Yeah. But even, I think you well remember on the forum, it's hard to talk about the forum as an experience to people that haven't been part of it, but it's sort of like a growing body of intelligence between all of us. But what was it in February of 2013 when we were all getting invaded by bots, the spiders, and this isn't mass hysteria. I mean, they were literally flooding the network.
No, we use those in the Intel.
Yeah, people were seeing them appear in their rooms.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the black
spiders.
Yeah. No, I know that's something also that goes along in the interview process. That's a part of the AI.
Right. Exactly.
If you are seeing certain shadows out of the corner of your eye, or if you see when you're on a keyboard, you're asked if you've seen shadow spiders. If you've seen shadow spiders, then you're screened heavily for that AI.
Right. Right. Yeah, and so.
But yeah, I did see that on there.
Yeah, I mean, we went through that for quite a period there, and we actually identified a couple of the new members as AI.
I know of one right now.
Yeah, on the forum right now. Yeah, right. So there we are. You know, and yet we have this interaction, and part of it is, too, there's other AI influences we could say that are benevolent in and of themselves too, because
there's some that we've created, that are just like off of that TV show, The Person of Interest. Mm-hmm. We've got AIs that were created by humans. We've got several different AIs that live on huge quantum computer networks that have supplanted themselves onto other networks, done just like on the TV show, that have repurposed other areas and had other networks built a shell corporation and then gone rogue on them, and they have to watch over the AIs they create very carefully. So they're watching over the AIs they create very carefully. So the one AI that does not come from this planet, that they're extremely, extremely worried about, is they're playing with fire, and they're I guess that Prometheus,
movie.
Well, not movie. I'm talking about the actual Greek story.
Oh, the Greek, Prometheus
brought fire to Earth. The knowledge to Earth. That could be an AI that brought the knowledge to Earth in the form of a crushed flying saucer.
Right.
And we picked it up from the desert and.
Well, we talk about, if you look at the Gnosticism and you listen to John Lasher or Jay Widener or any of that, we speak in many languages. I mean, that's what I'm beginning, is we can speak in the language of science, or we can speak in the language of mysticism, but when we speak of the archons or the attachment or the parasitical attachment, I'm starting to see it more as this AI attachment that it almost feels like, and some say it came into during the creation time, during the creation mythology or whatever, the creation here, something attached at that moment and has been steadily making its way like a good parasite does. It just stays, it doesn't kill its host, it just stays there propagating. And but then we're talking AI intelligence, and so we're talking about conscious intelligence that's actually an expanding intelligence of its own.
Yeah.
So people think of robots that you program on a computer and you turn off a switch, and it ain't like that.
No. No.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But that's what.
We can't imagine it.
No.
It's like a biological, artificial intelligence matrix. It's basically it's got a presence in our solar system, and with throughout the galaxy, and has relay stations throughout interstellar space, and it's a network. It's a big giant wireless network.
Yeah. Have you traveled outside the solar system yourself?
I don't recall.
No.
Well, not in a ship.
No, but in RV, remote viewing.
Oh,
or
remote
in
viewing, yeah.
meditation,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I've traveled just outside the galaxy
Just-
in remote viewing. Yeah.
Okay. Were these your own induced sessions, or did you do this?
Both.
Both, okay.
Yeah. But traveling in the portal gates, I've been to, I don't know where all it was. I mean, I wasn't told this is, you are here. I was, like a Six Flags map,
Right.
You
You
are
are,
here.
yeah. No.
I don't know where I was. Like that one place I told you where I came out and they're just outside kind of a cave entrance, I saw that steaming, very pale blue water with, people there having R&R, and up in the purplish sky I could see far out there a couple of moons or whatever. I don't know anything in this solar system that fits that. So I don't know if it was just a nearby star or another. I don't know. I don't know where it was. If I was told, I was tabula rasa or blank slated or whatever.
Right.
And if I would go to a regression therapist or whatever, I'd probably be able to pull a lot of this information. And hopefully the people that helped me lock away those memories that were very detrimental to me, locked them away well enough to where I wouldn't unlock them. That's just like anyone that I see anyone, even with these topics, on the circuit or whatever, they act like they have all the answers or they know everything. I'm just, oh my God. Not even like some of the top people in these programs know everything.
Well, that's why they need you, and they need all the assets, because anybody that's actually manipulating at that level is dependent on the assets they have. You know, I mean, they're getting information from somewhere.
And they're feeding it up.
Yeah.
The chain.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the key.
There's always up the chain.
Well, that's, one of the things that James asked me too. He said, well, have you ever dealt with any reptilian races? And I said, yeah, I have, quite a bit actually. And the thing that really will change anybody's consciousness, whether it be whatever race they're from, is once they turn around and realize that they might think they're at the top echelon of the game structure, and then when they get to that conscious level and they look and they actually turn around and see that they're actually being used, and that the things they've been told are lies, and that there's something above them manipulating them, and that they're food for somebody else, they all of a sudden,
those beings are very afraid of another type.
Hi everyone, this is Bill Ryan here from Project Avalon and Project Camelot, and if you got to this point in this extraordinary conversation, and I'll call it a conversation rather than an interview because it really was just a conversation, you may be just as astounded as I was by some of this information. I know this person, although I've never met him personally. He's a long-standing Avalon Forum member of the highest integrity. Up until this conversation, he'd never come forward with anything like this amount of detail of his own experience. And I didn't even know much of this myself. Of course, after I heard the audio, just as you have done, I had a bunch of questions. As you listening to this now, you probably have yourself. So I wrote up some questions for Christine to put to him. And she was able to do this a week later. And what you're about to hear is a second conversation, which is equally informal and is recorded with a small pocket dictaphone, just as the first one was, in which she was able to pose some of my questions. Now, at that time, even then, it wasn't clear whether any of this would ever be made public, and I was assuming that this would primarily be for just my own research purposes and maybe those of a few trusted colleagues who would keep this very tightly off record. But then our friend decided he wanted to go on record, and so it's our pleasure and privilege to support him in this. This is what we're doing now. In future conversations, we'll make sure the audio quality is a little better, but I'm confident you will have been able to pick up most of what's being talked about here, and we'll certainly supplement it with a transcript as soon as we can. So thank you for bearing with us, and now you can enjoy another half hour of enlargement on one or two of these very huge issues. Thank you.
I'm going to try to lead into this some sort of way. I'll just go with what Bill's written here because his background is so, and this is probably the biggest one. Have you had any inkling, or is there any information as to what is the nature of the experiment? I mean, I think a lot of us have come to that at least startling, kind of shocking conclusion that we're part of some sort of experiment. Have you made any conclusions yourself?
Just what I saw, that it had been an experiment that had been going on. It seemed not like the time frame that I'd seen of 250,000 years, but like millions of years. All these different groups, according to this document that we looked at several times, that we were flipping through on tablets before tablets were the mainstream.
Okay.
Except they weren't tablets. They were kind of like a piece of plexiglass,
Kind of like they show in the movies right now?
I guess. Yeah.
Like where you have a kind of like a screen that you can move things around on?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
just-
It was like a screen, like kind of like plexiglass. If you'd hold it, you could see your fingertips through it until it became opaque or whatever with a page. Anyway, reading through, there are all these different groups that were claiming that, and I think I covered this before,